So we've all suddenly got a bit more time on our hands than we used to, which is why everyone is busy making videos. If they're not making them, busy watching them. And I'm doing both of those. So we're walking down to my field out in the middle of nowhere in Dorset to have a look at some trees. I think with any luck we're going to find Seb and Gareth digging up some sugis, which we're coppicing into Daisugis and potting up. Let's go see what they're up to. And this is my little plantation of Cryptomeria japonica, which the Japanese call sugi. And I've been growing them from cuttings. They're a really good form. Hopefully they're a form called radicans, which has a sort of slightly tighter, denser kind of foliage to them. It's not quite as spiky as some Cryptomeria. So it's a Japanese conifer cedar family. And what I'm doing to them is, and I'll show you the after, is I kind of coppice them, chop them down at about knee height, and they resprout from there. And you get these new growths come up. And as the new growths come up, we chop all the side branches off. And this is the result. Something they do in the Kyoto area in Japan, sort of kansai tree. And they grow them for timber production there. But here we've got them all here. So Gareth and Seb have kindly started digging these trees up for me. Here's a couple that dug out of the ground this morning. And I'm going along with a pruning saw and chopping the top off. What I'm trying to do, here's a couple I chopped off before we dug them actually, is I'm trying to leave, chopping it about sort of 2-3 foot high, something like that, leaving one whirl of branches here, tidying off anything lower down just to make it tidy. And then I will get resprouts, some of them suckering up from around here, some of them from pruning, from where I've cut the branches. So I cut these remaining side branches, I cut that by about half. So I get a lot of new suckers and growth coming up from that this summer. And then we can start the training job after that. Oh, and look, here's one I did last year. So this fella I chopped in half, like I was chopping the other ones in half. But I did it last winter, not this winter. And you can see where I chopped the side branches in half here, that it's sending out new suckers. This was last summer, it sent out these new suckers. You can see this one's going crazy. So we chopped him in half here, and all of this new stuff grew up last summer. Right in the very centre, where I chopped the main trunk off, all of this stuff has grown up. So over the next few years, all of these will grow, and there's way too many here. Well, there's way more than we need. There's about sort of 20 or 30 new trunks effectively coming out. So as they grow this summer, I'll get a good idea of which ones are the most dominant, and I will thin them out, trying to keep them well spaced, so we've got a nice collection of 2, 3 or maybe 4 different sized branches and trunks. And then they get taller and taller, and each year after that, if you go back and look at a big one again, each year after that I chop off the side branches, so as it gets taller I remove these side branches, chasing up the new growth. So there's only ever about a foot of new growth on the top, like that, and you get the clear stems at the bottom. And they used to do that, or the reason they do that in the first place is for a timber thing. So when you harvest, if you can imagine these guys here, which we just chopped in half, if we was to harvest these, if I was to cut the side branches off, pull the bark off, underneath you'd start to see the knots where these things are going into the main trunk. But if I'd removed these each year as they grew, there'd be no knots in the wood. So when they harvest the poles from these trees in Kyoto, peel the bark off and dry them out, they're completely blemish-free, pale, pure poles of wood that they use as a piece of wood called a tokonoma in sort of Japanese shrines and Japanese household, a bit like your household altar. And every traditional house in Japan would have had a little altar in the corner, and they'd have one Cryptomeria pole, tokonoma, at one side effectively supporting it, and that would have been pure and knot free, which they'd have produced from this kind of wood. So if you go around an area north of Kyoto called Kitayama, the North Mountains, you will see a whole mountainside covered with much, much bigger versions of these trees. And I mean 100-year-old, 200-year-old trees, really, really big, and a whole mountainside of young trees like this in all states of production. So you'll see saplings, you'll see cuttings beds, you'll see hundreds of year old trees, you'll see all different processes. It's really amazing. So that's the Cryptomeria japonica, pruned in the Daisugi style, and I love it. It's not It's not what most people think of when they think of Japanese pruning and Japanese Niwaki and trees. It's a sort of one step closer to coppicing and pollarding and sort of woodcraft really than actual topiary. There's not so much skill in it, it's more just the process. So the actual process of making a great big chop in a tree, being brave enough to chop it in half, knowing that it's one of the conifers that you can chop in half and it doesn't die. You know, if you try doing this to a Leylandii, you'd very successfully kill it. So maybe you should try that, I could recommend that. But other than the sugi, you could do it to a yew tree, you could do it to a sequoia sempervirens. I don't think you could do it to sequoia dendron, but sequoia sempervirens, it would work really well. And in fact, sometimes you see photos in the redwood forest in California of a fallen over sequoia that has suckered the whole way along the trunk, and it's got loads and loads of new trees growing up from the main trunk. It's exactly the same idea. Basically, it does resprout from old wood. So you could try it with the sequoia. But sugis are something nice about the way a sugi grows, the way the foliage is quite dense like that along the top. And I love the balance of a really big old trunk like that at the bottom. And then these young, sort of graceful, elegant, tall, thin, skinny things growing up from it. For me, it's a lovely combination. Cool. Bye-bye.